All right, it's 6:04. We'll call the meeting to order. Turn it over to you, Greg, for roll call.
All right, Chairman Canfield.
Here.
Beecham.
Here.
Feldwalder.
Here.
Spicer is not, and Schaubin.
Here.
All right, we have 4 out of 5. We have a quorum.
I would make a motion to excuse the absence of Tamala Spicer.
I'll support.
We have a motion and support to excuse the absence. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to approval of the agenda.
I don't have any changes or anything to add.
I would make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll support.
We have a motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to item 3, approval of the minutes of the January 14th regular board meeting.
I'll move to approve the minutes as presented.
Support.
We have a motion and support to approve the minutes of the January 14th regular meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We also have the minutes for the January 25th special meeting.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting.
And I'll support.
We have a motion and support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to item 4, public comment for items not on the agenda. Hearing no comment from the audience, we will move on to action items. Greg, I'll turn that over to you.
All right, thank you. The only item we have under action items this evening is the next piece for the combustion turbine. And it may be seeming like it's fairly soon after the last one we just approved, but we are trying to get things ordered so that they get in on time and that we have every opportunity to get this second turbine up and running this summer. So there are a few items left on the major item category, and you have a memo there from Steve, and he and Barney will fill you in on what those are and how that gets us to where we want to be by the end of the summer.
Okay, I'll start by passing around a few quotes in the memo that I wrote at the time that the board meeting was delivered. I made note that we were still waiting for a few quotes and some final numbers, so we have received all quotes, and I'll just wait until everybody has those 1 minute.
Okay.
And I did ask Doug Barnes to join us tonight. Doug is our generation supervisor, for those of you who do not know. He is the one that's in charge of putting these turbines together. So I had asked him if he could provide you with a brief update, and if you have any questions in terms of specifics, he is the guy to ask. So does everybody have these papers in front of you? There are really 4 items we're looking at ordering. The first of which is switchgear, and Doug received a quote from Square D through Gray Bar for the switchgear, coming in at a price of $110,450. Newkirk also gave us a quote at $111,300. So this quote that you have for $110,450 is a little cheaper, and the advantage for going with Gray Bar and Square D directly instead of Newkirk is that they will be there for the commissioning, correct, Doug? If you want to speak to some of the benefits of going with Gray Bar.
Yeah, this includes their cost for commissioning, which is $8,000. It was $102,000. Newkirk wanted labor on top of theirs.
On top of the 111.
Square D also will give us a 3-year warranty on it, and their commissioning includes the proper operation and everything. They have a long list, practically a book of what they do. So it's a much better deal.
Welcome, Tamala.
Oh, Tamala. Perfect timing. We're right in the middle of our the first and only action item.
little bit
Here you
extra.
go.
Extra copies for her, Mike?
She can just hand her these.
These all of them, Greg?
Thank you.
I got more.
Yep.
Awesome, thank you.
So we're going over the final quote we received for the Rolls-Royce material that we'd like to order. The first of which is the switchgear. And we're looking at the Schneider Electric gray bar quote for $110,450. Doug, our generation supervisor, was just explaining that we also got a quote from Newkirk for the switchgear at $111,300, which did not include labor of installation. And going directly with Gray Bar and Square D, we're able to get a 3-year warranty, and they'll be on site for the commissioning, which would not have happened with the Newkirk quote. And the reason we're going with Square D is because the MCC panel for the Rolls-Royce and Solar turbine is Square D, as well as the switchgear for the Solar. So that's why we're going with the Square D product.
Okay, one quick question. So we have on our original memorandum that came, we have 4 different items that are on there.
Correct.
Are the 4 different items, are the other items coming from other companies?
Other companies.
Okay, and
Yep.
that's the only, so,
I'd just like to go
Right.
through each
Okay.
one by line and compare if any numbers change from when I wrote it to now.
so I would make a motion to purchase through Schneider Electric the gray bar of Grand Rapids of the $110,450.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and support. There's no further discussion.
I just have a question. So what, I guess if you can just explain like what is Square D, and I guess I'm just trying to understand what the
But
stuff is.
Square D is
Is
a brand
manufacturer.
name. This switchgear is basically identical to the one we purchased for the Solar. That gives us 2 identical units there, rather than having 2 different ones. They operate the same, they just a little different voltage.
So would you describe,
So the
what is
switchgear
the
is-
switchgear, what does it do? What's its
That's just-
function?
It's like a big light switch, a big circuit breakers. Circuit breakers from the outside utility to the generator, from the generator back to the switchgear, and then to the load for the building itself.
Okay.
So it basically goes from, 12,470 to 13,200, and then to the generator, back to the switchgear, and then to 480. And that basically just a set of circuit breakers and controls.
Okay, so it's just the plumbing, basically, electrical plumbing.
Yes. Electrical plumbing.
Cool. Yeah, I was just curious. I'll probably ask the same thing for the others, but
Okay.
when we get there.
Okay, so we have a motion and support to approve the purchase of switchgear through Snyder with Gray Bar for $110,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next.
The next 2 items on the memo were both transformers, a 5,000 and a 500 kVA transformer. At the time I wrote the memo, I showed prices of $66,973 and $11,345, and those prices are reflected on the stapled document with Cooper Power Systems. And you'll see on the front and back of the second page those prices. Since that time, it came today, quotes from Solomon, and Solomon is able to provide the exact same transformers at a price of $58,795 instead of $66,973, and $10,595 instead of $11,345. The transformers from Solomon are remanufactured, but there is a 36-month warranty, and Doug's feeling is that they'll do just as good a job as the transformers quoted by Cooper Power Systems, and there's really no reason we shouldn't go with the cheaper bid.
Have we purchased from Solomon before?
Yeah, we
So we've had-
mainly purchased from Solomon.
Okay,
Yes.
so good relationship and, okay.
Very good.
What's the normal life of transformers?
Tom Russo would say forever.
I think we amortize them over 20 years, so they have a book life of 20 years.
Booklet, yeah, but
The fact that these are rebuilt is not really a concern. They can be rebuilt again if we needed to at some point, or they swap them out.
The rebuild is probably just changing the bushings and coils for the different voltages. Other than that, yeah, a transformer is pretty simple. One set of coils feeds into another set of coils, no moving parts, and they just last.
All right.
We have transformers on our system that are 40 years plus, so.
Okay. Just asking to get apples to apples comparison if it's a concern, but sounds like it isn't.
Now, the new transformers come with a 12-month warranty,
So,
and this one they'll give 3 months, or 3 years.
3 years.
So the remanufactured ones, or the refurbished ones have a longer warranty?
Yes.
Go figure.
Exactly.
So, and it looks like we're saving approximately $9,000 with going with Solomon as compared to Cooper Power Systems.
that'd be correct.
Okay. I would make a motion to approve the purchase of the 5,000 kVA transformer and the 500 kVA transformer from Solomon Corporation. List price of $10,595 and $58,795.
I'll support.
All right, we have a motion and support. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The last item is on the Eaton page that we haven't looked at yet. And you'll see that the total shows $18,697.29, but that includes tax. We will be submitting a tax exempt form, and that will be acknowledged. So the price to us would be the $17,790. Newkirk gave us a quote at $20,000 for the same product, whereas here we're getting it for $17,790, and that was a 20-week delivery, and this is a 7-week delivery. So, again, I think it's apparent that we should probably go with the Eaton. That's what we're recommending.
And what's the recloser?
That's a safety device that if there's a fault on the line, it will open automatically and attempt to close automatically.
Oh, okay.
If something hit the line, caused a fault, and then fell off, then it would reclose and there'd be no outage.
Okay. And then if I kept tripping, it just stays open.
Yeah, it chips, you can program how many times you want it to reclose.
Okay.
And for how long.
And this is just for the turbine then, right?
Yes.
Right.
For the turbine, the switch gear, transformers, and basically everything there.
Okay.
For the plumbing of the,
Yep. That's what I kind of figured. It's protecting all the.
yes.
Um,
Yeah. And Cooper's built these for a long time. They're one of the top manufacturers of reclosers. Schweitzer.
Yeah, Schweitzer.
Was another one.
And I talked to a few different places, and they couldn't do any better. In fact, Solomon told me if I could get it for $20,000 or less to get it. He couldn't do anything that good. And this comes with not only the control box, but also the recloser itself. Well, I also talked with Schweitzer, and all they would do is sell the control box. Then we'd have to go other way and get the recloser itself, and then hope that they work together. But this is all one set.
I just happened to notice on this quote, it says payment terms paid by credit card. I'm assuming we're not putting this on credit. Is that a fair assumption?
That would be fair. I mean,
Okay.
I'd love to get the
Just-
points if they let us.
Just one.
No, to make it clear, though, we do use credit cards for purchases just to get the points, and then we can
Okay.
use those for miles and
Yeah.
travel and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But it's not for,
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
We pay the bill when it comes
we pay
in.
the bill at the end of the month, yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that we're not, buying on credit, that's all. Okay.
I would make a motion to purchase the recloser control from Eaton at a cost of $17,790.
I'll
Without
second.
support.
Go ahead, Tina.
All right, we have a motion and support. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Before we go on,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I wanna provide a few other updates before we go on, but maybe that's what you were
well,
gonna.
no, well, I was asked, I would like Greg, just to go over, the Rolls Royce, what the purpose of that is. Again, I know that the board, and I again, just want the public to understand, what we're using this for, in the peak season, offsetting our, and just give a little general history. The solar is up and running.
Right.
And this, we're slated for the 2016 to be up and running.
Right.
And what the purpose of this is and why the board has gone in this direction.
Okay. We originally had some peaking units here. They were diesel units, and they were housed in the back of this building. And for various reasons, upgrades for safety, upgrades for EPA, so on and so forth, we had to put, we were going to have to put significant dollars into those and to keep them up to speed. And they also did not provide all of the peaking requirements that we would need. Our system has grown dramatically since those units were put in and installed, and they had a capacity of about 3.6 megawatts, and we're up to a point now where our peak is about 7 megawatts over what other capacity we own through other facilities in the state, or actually the one in Ohio as well through MPPA. So our total peak capacity is about, or peak need is about 15 or 15 and a half megawatts. We have somewhere around 7 that we purchased with other facilities, and so we needed more peaking capacity as well as the potential to replace those units. So we happened to be able to find back in 2011 a couple of combustion turbines, and to buy those at a very good price, and they're to replace the peaking power that we needed from these diesel generators. And we actually purchased one of the combustion turbines for less than what it would have cost us to have upgraded the diesels. And we had the opportunity to buy the second one, which gave us that additional capacity that we needed, another 3.5 megawatts. So we have 2 units that get somewhere around 3.6 megawatts, giving us a total a little over 7 for peaking capacity to be used in the summer when we have peak demand on our system.
Thank you.
And we do that because it's a lot cheaper than trying to buy it
Right.
the day we need it off the grid, kind of.
Exactly,
basically.
exactly. And they're much more efficient. The diesels, it wasn't efficient for us to run them until the price in the market got over about $160 a megawatt hour. And we can run these combustion turbines at around 60 to 65, so we can save almost $100.
I think even with current gas prices, because they're so low, and I mean, we'll see what happens in the summer with gas prices, but I even had it, I want to say mid-50s.
Mid-50s, yeah.
So, just to give you an idea of how much it costs to produce a megawatt with those compared to the previous diesels.
And there's times that in the peak part of the summer when to go out to the market to buy, during those peak times, it could be hundreds of dollars a megawatt hour.
And that's when, hopefully, we'll be able to also sell that, even if we might not need it at that point, but if it's the market needs it, we'll be able, through MPPA, be able to sell that
into the market.
into the market.
And get that pricing.
Correct.
So we can either save for ourselves or make money on them by selling it into the market at a much higher price than it costs us to run. Yep,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I just wanted to give a few other updates regarding what we have left, so you can just, okay, how much more equipment do we need to purchase? And the good news is, we're nearly at the end. Barney can speak to what the equipment does. We have a water injection skid. We have a final component from OnPower for some labor that we're gonna have to pay for. The water injection skids right around mid-20s, and the labor we estimate to be 25. And then there's insulation / lagging for a muffler,
Right.
and we're trying to get a price on that, but I show mid-60s. Now there's gonna be Doug's payroll time, there's gonna be random materials we need here and there that'll just come up, but I don't expect it's gonna be more than another $100,000 to finish it out after tonight. So just to give you guys an update that this takes care of the bulk of what we have left to do.
How much was it all total then? Do we know, or roughly?
I think it's gonna come, I'm gonna have to look at our GL. I don't wanna give a final answer
Yeah.
for the record, but I think the last I looked at it, roughly 1.5 million.
Okay.
I think that's close to what we put in the last one. But the insurance company
Right.
will not let us insure these 2 turbines for less than $7 million.
Okay.
And we're saying that, we've only put in, 3.75 million into these. We don't want to pay more insurance than we need to. But they're saying, well, what you guys did is worth $7 million.
Mhm.
So we have tried to do it as cost effectively as possible. So big kudos to Doug for putting these together and shopping around for the last 3 years.
Well, and I think kudos to everybody.
Right.
Through the whole company. I mean, Greg, when the board wanted to look at being more self-sufficient as compared to having to, in case of an emergency, having to look at outside sources and to be able to have our electric. Greg, found the one, and I can't, was it Ford was first,
Yep,
and then
Ford.
Joliet, and then in Joliet, just, we were in the market to purchase one, and all of a sudden, another one came available, newer one that we just couldn't refuse, and the one that came from Ford Motor Company, we also were able to get a steam turbine
A boiler.
boiler with that we will be able, at some point, possibly utilize that to give us another 3.
3 to 5 megawatts.
Right. So I'm gonna I think it's, yes, Doug and you guys have done a wonderful job, but I'm gonna toot our horn. I think it's everything from the board to the administration to our office to our linemen. It's the whole company wide that's made this possible.
And I know we've just talked very generally about the steam aspect of this, and I know when we've toured, you've talked a little bit about that. Is that sort of in the pipeline of the plan? Because I haven't really seen it kind of like, here's the plan as to when we're gonna.
No, everything
Gear
we've
that
done
up.
so far is to get us to the point where then we start looking at whether that's a reasonable
Okay.
decision. I think part of it will depend on whether we can find a good steam turbine, like we found these combustion turbines. I think we'll be able to, but if we had to go out and buy a new steam turbine, we'd have to think a little harder on it. It'd probably cost more for a steam turbine than we have in both of these combustion turbines to buy a new one. But I think it's well within the realm of possibility. We are, as you'll see later in the long-range financial plan, we'll be building cash to be able to do those kinds of things.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to note that you wrote in there that Doug is excited the end is in sight. So you're really excited about this, huh?
Well, he keeps emailing me, hey, Steve, when can we get this stuff? I told him, hey, I think
Yeah.
we're ready, so
Cool.
I'm not putting words in your mouth, am I?
Yeah.
I'd like to see it running. The solar runs good.
Cool.
And this one, all preliminary, there's things to work out yet, a few items here and there, but all preliminaries, looks like it's gonna run good too. I've turned the engine over and things are looking smooth, and everything I've tested is working. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, this is exciting too. I mean, I know when I first talked to Greg about this back when I was on council, I thought this was such a neat opportunity, I guess, for the city to be self-sufficient. The fact that we have 7 megawatts soon, once this one's here, and then potentially 3 or 4 more, that's almost all of our regular load that we can self-generate if we ever needed to.
Well, I think it's,
And that's, to me, that's pretty impressive. I don't, how many other communities can do that, I guess? I don't,
And
I don't know.
not many.
Not, yeah, not many.
and I think it's increasingly important, given some of the projections that are being talked about, you know, in the next couple of years, potential brownouts, potential shortages, and I realize they're saying probably more northern Michigan
Right.
than here, but I mean, if the worst case scenario happens, we might very well need that power to take care of ourselves. So I think it's important to have that.
Good.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming, Doug.
Good job.
You're welcome.
All right, then on to informational items. We have the performance data for the month. It was a good month, January, month 7 in our fiscal year, and it was slightly warmer than the previous year, which is not a bad thing for most people's perspective, but we sell less electricity when it's warmer. So, our revenue was down slightly, both residential and commercial. Commercial was actually flatter this year versus last year for the month of January. But all in all, it was a good month, and just very slight differences. 7 months year to date in that very first row, last columns. The total electric sales, we can see, is still over the previous fiscal year, 7 months year to date, by about 300,000 kilowatt hours. So even with the milder temperatures this year and so forth, customers are still using more electricity. That's increasing our need for capacity, and we're doing well. We had a few more residential customers than we did a year ago, but about the same as we did the previous month, so it didn't change really much from December. That number is indicated down there in the residential customers from the previous month. Farther down towards the middle of the page, total electric requirements for November. Remember, we're a couple months behind on the total requirements. And again, you can see that it was a little warmer. Our total electric kilowatt hours purchased for the month of November was down slightly from the previous year, but not significant. This is a month where we have quarter ending data, and for residential and commercial customers, see that this is also showing the same type of trend for the quarter. The average number of kilowatt hours used by our residential customers was down about 10% from 650 kilowatt hours in the month to 585, and the commercial stayed fairly flat at almost 11,000 kilowatt hours average for the quarter. Then on to the next page, we look at our cash situation. We have our total investments, and you can see that those are holding nicely at close to $2.5 million, 2.477. And again, we're back up into that area that we want to maintain, above 2.25. Now that we have most of these capital expenses out of the way for the combustion turbines and the biodigester, and we had gotten down to right around the bare minimum that we wanted to get to in terms of cash reserves at $1.5 million last year at this time, and we built that back up over the course of the last few months.
Supposed to be spending here after the approval of these items, so.
Right.
Can you remind me what the recommended, and what the required and the...
The required is
recommended
10% of the
I couldn't
value,
remember.
depreciated value of our system.
I believe it's actually the original
Oh,
cost.
the original cost value of our system, right.
Yep.
Okay.
Right. Which we have at about 15 to 17.
Yeah, it's constantly changing as we retire assets or close projects. Like currently, like as of today, probably around 19 billion. But a year ago was different because we'd closed projects since then.
Right.
So,
Okay.
The recommended range by the charter is 10 to 20%,
Mhm.
so we
Try to stay
within that
Yeah.
range. And we'll talk maybe a little bit about it later, but MVPA is initiating a new program to help individual municipal utilities have better financial pictures for when they go to bond, because a lot of the projects we bond through MPPA. And so if the individual utilities look good, then MPPA looks good with the members that are getting
Get a better
getting into individual projects. So some of the statistics that they're recommending that we look at, we'll be talking about over the next few months. And there's some probably goals that we're going to set in terms of maybe we want to increase our cash reserves in an area, or there's other things that we can do to help what our bond rating might look like. And so we'll be looking at those more closely. But I'm really pleased that MPPA is offering this program. This is one of the things that I've tried to promote during my tenure as chair there, is offering more services that help the individual utilities raise themselves in stature, not only for bonding, but for reliability, like the RP3. We're trying to get more municipal utilities involved in the RP3 program and those types of things. So this is one that they've just come out with that Steve is excited about.
Yeah, it's going to be a great program.
Okay, you can see the delinquents, we're keeping down there in the $100 range, so great job again, Sharon. It's always good to see that, the delinquents from the previous month. The delinquent balance of the inactive accounts is a couple $1,000s less than it was last year at this time, so again, that looks good. Aging analysis looks fairly constant over the last 2 or 3 months, so I think everything's holding pretty well there. On to the income statement. Do I have any questions on the performance data? I mentioned or alluded to, and when we looked at the performance data, that it was a good month in January, the 7th month of our fiscal year. And so we see that revenue for the month was over budget by almost $20,000, and that gets us back up to where we're caught up. Remember, we talked about revenues being down a little bit. We had this anomaly with purchase power for a couple months when Bell River or Campbell weren't running. We had to supplement that with purchase power that we buy off the market. And so we're finally now taking the credits for that, and we've got things pretty much back in shape. We had good revenue this month, and so we're within Steve's 1% of budget for total revenue.
Back on track.
Back on track.
0.99%.
And we get down to
Yeah, exactly.
purchase power, and purchase power was significantly less for the month of January. And again, we got those credits plus the advantage of the warmer weather, and so we were under budget by $70,000 on purchase power expenses for the month, and that puts us again close to that 1% year-to-date in terms of meeting budget. We're just 1.23% over budget for purchase power through the 7th month of our fiscal year. And again, at your leisure, you can work down through those rest of those expenses, but most of them are fairly close to budget or under budget. And when we get to our total operating expenses in the middle of page 4, again, under budget for the month. Most of that was due to lower purchase power, but we're again at that 1% year-to-date within budget.
Could you, distribution on page 2?
Distribution on page 2.
good thing is
Down
here,
toward the
Mark.
bottom, substation expenses. Could you just explain that number to me?
Let me find it here. Substation.
It's like
expenses.
4th from the bottom.
Yes.
Okay.
The east side of town.
Yeah.
Substation. We dismantled that, put in transformers.
Okay.
There was a lot of material that we used
Okay.
for that project that actually can be capitalized. That was
Oh,
initially
okay.
expense.
Okay,
So it had shown up as
Okay.
expenses in previous months.
yeah.
We
and
looked
now
at it and
it's
said, okay, not all
okay.
of what was that was for a
I was
rec
just
out.
like, wow,
So
that's
that's
a-
why there's a credit. in
That's
the
a
substation
weird credit
expenses.
number there. So, okay, thank
Yep,
you.
yep.
Thanks.
Okay, so our operating income is very good for the month, $117,000. Again, that puts us back within a couple of percent of budget for the year, a little bit over on operating income, and pretty much the same situation with our net income. So everything is back on track. All the anomalies have been worked out, so to speak, and we're 7 months in good shape heading into the rest of the spring and summer. Capital expenses, not much has shown up here since last month. We have ordered those items for the combustion turbine that we did in December, and we will be ordering these, so we can expect that capital expenses will be showing up in the next month or two. But we still have plenty left in the budget. The $935,000 that we had budgeted, we still have $735,000 left roughly. And then if we go to the second page, the capital budget expenses incurred by project as opposed to by line item or GL number. We have given you an updated version of that. We did some shifting around of the dollars in the specific categories. And we did that shifting to be able to move more of the purchases of the combustion turbine into this year, so we make sure we get the parts in time to get it done this year. Some of those expenses we had thought we would hold off until the 2016-17 budget and put the dollars in that fiscal year. But in order to take advantage of being able to order them now, the better prices that we had, and make sure we get them in time for Doug to get it up and running this summer. We've shifted some of the potential budget categories on that sheet to allocate the dollars to the combustion turbine. But the total remains the same. The total is $935 that you approved and that City Council approved. Steve, anything else you want to add there?
No, the anticipation for me would be that, yes, we did reallocate money, but the money that was reallocated, we'll just budget for starting July 1. So just because it's just going to be a delay of a few months for 3 of these categories, which were the vehicle replacement fund, the energy center upgrades, and then the 1247 upgrades. So it's just a matter of waiting 3 or 4 more months to do those items so we can do the turbine now and get it up and running.
The vehicle, are we talking about, I mean, that's just a fun, are we talking
Yeah,
about
I'm
replacing one of our big trucks? Or?
No, we have no need to replace those trucks at this time, right, Mark?
I'm getting close, though.
Wanting to and needing to.
Just throwing it out there. I'll bring up my folder like Doug did.
We do have a couple of vehicles that probably need some body work. Most of our vehicles have very low mileage on them and very low hours, but they are, maybe 10 years old, 8 years old, 12 years old. But anyway, there's some body work that we need to do on a couple of the vehicles.
I would actually probably make a separate bank account and just transfer money into that bank account and know that, yes, that money's coming out of our capital budget to be spent later. Does that make sense? So we have it in reserves. And it's money we can't spend on other projects.
Basically encumbering it.
Right.
So that's basically just a vehicle, well, like you said, it's a vehicle replacement fund, right?
Right.
So it's just,
And I think Mark had done a good job with his equipment replacement fund, where he showed the equipment and trucks and when he planned on replacing it. That's something I'd like to create, just to give
Oh, you mean
everyone an
from the city?
idea.
From the city,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Mark yeah.
Mhm.
So, expect to see that in the future months.
Okay,
If that worked out well.
on to the outage summary. We had 4 outages for the month. A total of 9 customers were out during those 4 outages. We had 3 of them, if you look on the back, 3 of them were squirrels. So we had active squirrels in the month of January.
Because it was warm.
Because it was warmer, they were out running around and playing on the wires or looking for some place to be warm. I'm not sure which. Haven't
Oh, they got warm. over
figured
there.
out that psyche yet.
Yeah, they got warm.
Yeah, they did get warm, one way or the other. And we had one section of underground that burned up, and we talked about that last time.
Right.
Tom showed you some pieces of that underground that had been gnawed by another critter.
Did you figure out what it was? I thought You're saying that maybe it'd come out when they pulled out the rest of the cable, but
No, I don't think anything came out of it, Mark.
No,
I am so glad we don't have visuals this month.
Okay, all right.
Just saying.
No fried?
it might have
They
not.
threatened to bring the fried critters, so
That
I'm
started
I'm
the
thankful.
water and all that kind of stuff, so maybe he just nodded and never got electrocuted, but
Oh,
never
so
got
then-
anything out.
not enough to expose the
Yep.
wire, and then that ran out, and then something else.
Something else caused it to short.
Okay.
Yep.
Or one tough
Bad looking.
Yeah.
critter.
One tough critter.
Yeah, there's one really crazy animal running around there.
All right, on to the
Wire up.
manager's report. MMEA, MPPA, APPA are organizations. They had their board meetings after ours last month, so I do have some things to report. We're still tracking the potential legislation for Michigan's energy future. It appears that the process has slowed down somewhat. We had expected that maybe we'd actually get legislation late last fall. It didn't happen. Both Senator Knopf's and Nesbitt were pushing House and Senate bills, and went into the holiday without having either of those passed by either branch of the legislature. Coming back in to session this spring, or this winter, we've had the crisis, the water crisis in Flint, which has seemed to overshadow almost everything that's going on in Lansing right now. So the expectation at this point is that maybe Knopf's will get his bill out on the floor yet this month, but there's so much going on with the crisis in Flint and the teachers' issues in the city of Detroit that it looks like it'll probably be fall before anything gets solidified in Lansing with respect to the future energy legislation. So they're hoping at the worst-case scenario that maybe with a lame duck session at the end of the year, they'll get something done. It's not a priority at the moment like it was in November.
Probably depends on what happens in Flint.
Yeah, it might depend on what happens in Flint, yes.
And I don't know if this, I'm, in today's paper, Supreme Court puts Clean Power Plan on hold on a 5-4 vote.
Yes, that's coming up next.
And, okay.
No, that's fine. We can talk about it now. One of the things that we had talked about several months ago was this Clean Power Plan, and it's an EPA attempt, an Obama and EPA attempt to put a constraint on power plants and the amount of carbon that they emit, which is one of the things that has moved the industry from using coal to using natural gas. And so they were actually going to put limits on carbon. It does affect us, even though we don't have any coal plants here in Lowell. We do own portions of 2 coal plants, Bell River and Campbell. And any requirements that they may have had to curtail carbon usage or to be limited by the amount of carbon they can emit would have impacted us. And so we've been watching that closely. We've talked about it a couple times briefly. I think the legislation was 1,400 pages long, something like that. Very complicated, and there's been work groups in the state working on it, the DEQ's working on it. Each state has the ability to come up with its own plan if it doesn't like the EPA's plan, and so it's been a very difficult task to try and get to the place where you decide what you might want to do as a state. And it's been in the courts, and as Perry said, at the 11th hour last night, or the night before, I guess, the Supreme Court put a stay on its implementation. And it was a 5-4 decision by the U.S. Supreme Court to stay it. It's really a huge victory, so to speak, for those that think President Obama and the EPA have usurped more administrative power than they have been given by the legislature. So this is the first time we've had a number of issues. We've had mercury issues, we've had air transport issues from one state to another, all those things that have been implemented in the last 2 or 3 years that have created a huge cost to power plants to stay in business that the Supreme Court has let go through, even when they've been challenged. And so this is the first time that they've taken a stand against this next layer of regulation. So that's a positive thing. So we don't know how long that will last. We actually had a meeting in Lansing today about the Clean Power Plan and how Michigan might implement it if it comes to that. It looks like this could maybe put it on hold for another 9 months or so by the time EPA gets back to them to answer the questions that the Supreme Court had. But it's a big deal.
I mean, they're just saying on this article, Federal Appeals Court in Washington last month refused to put the plan on hold.
Right.
That lower court likely is not to issue a ruling on the legality of the plan until months after it hears oral arguments beginning June 2nd.
Right.
Any decision likely will be appealed to the Supreme Court, meaning resolution of the legal fight likely is not to happen until after Obama leaves office. And what they're saying is the compliance with the new rules wasn't required till the year 2022, but states had to submit their plans to the Environmental Protection Administration by September of this year.
Right.
So, again, it's, like I said, it's just,
Another layer of potential techniques that coal-fired plants would have to use to try and maintain compliance with EPA standards. Okay. Next update I had was also a legal update, an update on the Great Wolf Lodge case, and you may remember this is a case that completely changed the landscape for municipals in Michigan in order to be able to compete with customers outside their service territory, outside their city limits. And we've talked about it before, but again, as an overview, both Holland and Coldwater had customers come to them and say they would like the local municipal utility to serve them, and the municipal utility was serving customers in their area, and so the municipal utility agreed to provide them service, was able to provide them service at a lower rate than consumers. Consumers filed a suit against Holland and Coldwater for offering service to those customers. And we won those cases both in the circuit courts and the appellate courts, and now that's going to the Supreme Court for a review of the ruling that caused all this, what they call the Great Wolf Lodge case. So that's now going before the Supreme Court. We're submitting briefs for oral arguments. That should happen in June, and hopefully by the end of the summer we'll have a new ruling on that case that will get us back the ability to compete in franchised territories outside our city limits, which would be like Virginia's Township and Lowell Township for us. That's the update on that one. MPPA is conducting their strategic plan review during February. Steve and I will be attending that planning day on February 18th in Lansing. And MPPA staff is still working on agreements for those potential wind projects that we talked about over the last couple of months. Actually, a new player has come forth with another project. So we have two projects now that are in the works with MPPA that are providing wind energy at about that 5 cents a kilowatt hour. And so we'll have the opportunity to take advantage of some of that coming up here. We're hoping to have contracts in place by the end of June. So those are good things. APPA Washington legislative rally. Steve and I will be attending that as well. I'm going for MMEA, MPPA, and Steve will be attending for Lowell and Power. System upgrades. The biodigester update, which I didn't have listed on here. The new contractor, the new operator, has been there for a couple of weeks now. They have uncovered a number of areas that they think were being operated not to the best efficiency of the system, and have made recommendations and are starting to implement some of those recommendations. And Greg Northrup is very pleased with the way they have jumped in with both feet as the operator, have people on site already, and are making some of these changes. And it looks like it's going to, you know, get everything up to where the original expectation was. And I don't know if you remember, but when we first started talking about the biodigester, some of the input that we got from people that we were communicating with and going out for bids with, some of the information we received said, don't use people to work on biodigesters that have historically been wastewater treatment people, because they don't understand. They understand the chemistry of the wastewater part of it, but they don't understand the chemistry and how you satisfy the bugs to produce energy. And so I think that's where Greg has realized now that the operators they had previously were not of that mindset. They were mostly wastewater people, and so they spent most of their time trying to treat the wastewater and put systems in place to treat the wastewater and not focusing on the gas being produced by the critters in the biodigester. So that was a small component, that wastewater of the whole program over there, and we used some of that water that came from Lighthouse and so forth, but in the grand scheme of things, it was a small piece of what needed to be done to get the bugs to do their job more effectively. So the new operator's on top of it, and Greg is pleased with the changes that they're implementing. So
So what are some of those efficiencies they're finding? Potential, you know, rooms for improvement?
two of the things were they were putting chemicals into the liquid stream to try and enhance the separation of the solids from the liquid.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that was the absolute opposite of what they needed to be doing. They needed to do that at a different place in the system, and all that did was help clog things up more. So it's actually going to be more cost effective for Spark now. They don't have to use those chemicals. They don't have to buy them. They don't have to inject them into the system. That was one thing. Another part was actually the mechanism that they were putting in place to try and then get those solids out of the liquid. Doesn't need to be there if you don't have the chemicals in there causing it to coagulate and make those solids. So three of the steps that they had implemented, the new Veolia has figured that it isn't helping anything. So they're going to remove some of those, and then they have another way of separating the liquid from the fast oils and grease, and to make that more effective.
So how would they separate it then instead of chemically?
I don't know the details, Andrew.
Okay. Sorry,
I feel good that I remembered that much.
It's company secret.
Yeah. I'm sure Greg, we can have Greg in a month or so and give an update on that. But I just got a call from him yesterday, and he was just flat out excited.
Okay.
So.
Any word yet
There's
on
a lot of
when we
excited
might,
people.
sorry, when we might be doing a public, like we had talked about it last fall and things weren't quite ready and.
Right. I'm thinking this summer will be perfect.
Okay. You can come back and join us for that?
Absolutely. Wouldn't miss it.
So with that, I guess maybe at a informational for next month's meeting, you know, I have wanting to, I guess, pick your brain or make sure that there's documents, because again, you're retiring March 25th, and I know that you said you'd be available for calls and answers and everything, but one is, again, we presently do not own the biodigester. We have, you know, an agreement that 5 years from when they're at full production, that we have the option to purchase, and, you know, so I guess I'd like, as a board member and as a board, to have some kind of, you know, here's the plan here's what I foresee, again, because you've worked hand in hand with Greg Northrup and everything, and have some kind of plan of what we're going to do, if we're gonna purchase that, where's the capital gonna come from, and all that kind of
Okay.
stuff. So, not to throw you on the spot right now, but I think would be an agenda item for our next meeting to have some kind of,
Okay,
helping the
Yep.
board guide them in making the right decision on, and what's all involved in making that decision.
okay.
Again, I know that
Bits
it's
and pieces.
5 years away, but
Right.
we need to be planning,
That's one of my items on this,
planning ahead.
one of my comments on this thing was
Oh, okay.
just that.
Yeah. Because, I mean, we've had bits and pieces, but to have sort of, okay, here's
Yep.
where everything is, yeah.
That's a good comment though.
Have a Gantt chart for
Yeah.
why would I just purchase? We can do that. Can we, Steve?
Yeah, you can do anything with enough time.
I'm loading a bunch of stuff up
Yeah.
on you, Steve.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Barry.
now that you have this assistant or
Right.
Whatever the new title is.
GM, I'm gonna load you up.
Right, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
No pressure, no
I
pressure.
think just a few dozen spreadsheets would be fine.
Yeah, sure.
And don't forget the graphs. You know how much we like them.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, and we've had the Rolls Royce update, so we'll move on. Natural gas supply is still in process. I should have a meeting in the next couple of weeks with consumers on that, and we're still working with our other potential vendors. Sharon, the Line Shack, mural painting. Sharon has talked to the Lowell Arts. We have a couple of options to move forward with that. We think that maybe April or May, we may get something rolling on that. The way that they did the mural on the trail building, I think we've talked about it, but just briefly, an artist came in, an artist was hired, some students signed up for a class, they worked under this artist, and they did the painting, and it took a 6 week, 6 week period for them to do that. They did it on panels, and then connected, put the panels on the building. So if we did that same type of thing, the estimated cost is about $7,500 to do that. And if we left the students out of it, it would be more like $4,000. My perspective is I think it's a project that would be fun for students to get involved in. I'd just as soon go ahead and spend the extra money and get students
Can we get a
involved.
community grant and do it in partnership with Lowell Arts? I mean,
That's a possibility. That's a possibility.
The trails did get some
I was
sort
gonna
of,
say,
a
'cause I-
little bit of a grant,
Yeah,
and
I
I think
think-
from the Rotary also.
I think, Rotary paid for part of it, and I think a lot of it came from the
Right.
community foundation, so.
And I was gonna say that, now that the building's painted,
Looks a lot nicer.
the mural is not as, if I have it on my to-do things,
list?
it's kind of dropped down. It's not a high priority for me.
Okay.
But the other thing that I would look at is maybe in coordination with, I know that the chamber and everything, they're trying to figure out what they're doing with the showboat and all that, yeah, if we're moving forward, that's great, but I'm just saying that maybe it'd be, depending on what they're thinking of doing with the showboat and with that area over there, because again, you're looking across, so
Right.
I'm just
Maybe
giving
we have a
my,
showboat going the other way on our side.
right.
We could get Rotary to pay
Or a
for it,
battle
just
ship.
put a giant rotary wheel on the back of
yeah,
it, service above South.
Yeah, that would
So-
work.
I'll go for a PR grant.
Okay.
That was kind of the next piece. They said that we needed to think about what the mural would look like and what
What do we
wanted to
want?
go for a design on that.
Just please don't use the power guy.
I think the power guy's great.
I think the power guy is so ugly.
Hey,
I'm
They
sorry.
have leg size.
For a theme, I was just gonna suggest
Power
light
guys, you
as a
take
theme.
Pictures with them.
Oh.
I mean,
If you heard
Sharon
that,
and I had thought about a
It would
couple
call, like,
of
history.
poles with linemen on them,
There you go.
since we don't have any over
will
here.
you model, Mark?
Oh, yeah. I
Hey,
sure
we could
would.
do a lineman calendar to pay for it. There you go.
So I just have lime on the calendar.
Anyway, that's just my, now that the building's painted, it's,
It's not as imperative.
for me.
Yes.
And again, so that's maybe like,
LimeandLife.com.
and I don't know where the chamber is and everything with that whole showboat.
They just started the committee work.
Right.
I mean, they've just kind of pulled all the partners together because Rotary